Well, if men were angels, there would be no need for government. James Madison said that and he wasn't wrong. If men were angels, there wouldn't be need for plenty of things like the courthouse behind me or even fantasy football commissioners. Men aren't angels, people are imperfect, people argue, so we need some law and order. We got that with our commissioner, Andrew Amade, and although he and I tend to disagree often, I think that there's a mutual respect between us. We'll see. I'm sure it will come out in our discussion. Welcome back to Chris's Picks.
He's got the picks, the show's a kick, the guests are all a trip. So don't delay, grab your chair and stay, because it's time for Chris's Picks.
If you could return, don't let it burn, don't let it fade. I'm sure.
Welcome back to Chris's Picks. I want to start the show off by addressing something. No, there wasn't an episode last week, and no, it wasn't because LSU lost. I had food poisoning, and then I had a final trial at the end of the week, so there really was no time to do an episode. But let's discuss the elephant in the room. Let's discuss LSU. Clearly, I'm not in a good mood about it. I'm not gonna be in a good mood about it. A lot of people have asked, Chris, your health is failing you, the Tigers have failed you, your fantasy team is failing you. What gets you out of bed in the morning? And to me, quite simply, the answer is my alarm. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. My alarm gets me out of bed in the morning. Oh, but Chris, there's so much to live for. There's family, there's friends. Okay, let me know when the credits to your little Disney movie start to roll and you come back to reality, because I will be down the street at Hog Alley drowning my sorrows away. You can feel free to come join me then.
Thanks. I needed that.
Okay, let's talk about the recap. I went 5-1. The guests went 5-1. Both Dave and Cole went 5-1. I'm 29-19 for the year. The guests are 30-18. I'm one game back. Don't care. I'm going to catch them. Let's talk about the games. Gritty and the Jets narrowly escaped defeat from pending trade. DeAndre Swift scored to give Drew an edge in what was the lowest scoring game this week. In fact, Drew has the second fewest points scored against him this season. The first, his opponent, pending trade. Wonder why their records are so good. For the first time ever, I have a write-in statement for a special guest to discuss this next game. The almighty and powerful Can't Guard Jameis team slayed the sad sack Chubby Dubbies last week thanks to heroics from David Montgomery. Like a fearless Spartan whose breastplate glistened in the Mediterranean sun, Blake destroyed the hopes and dreams of his foes and continues to bring peace, democracy, and stability to the Western world, aka the Cho Dynasty. That was written by Blake's hype man, none other than William Arnold, who hypes him up at every chance he gets. Speaking of William, his Dixieland Dreaming team closed out a tight game against Team Takeout thanks to a 33-point game from Amon-Ra St. Brown. William remains number 2 in the league. The young and the holeless kept his playoff hopes alive with a big upset over Hunter Biden's laptops. Jonnu Smith, who I've maligned this entire show, scored 2 touchdowns to give Daniel the second highest score of the week. Congrats to both of them. Team Average Ho walloped the Mahomies in a surprising finish. Taysom Hill not only led our beloved Saints to victory last Sunday, which was the only glistening thing to come from the week. Taysom Hill also scored nearly 40 fantasy points for Harry in the process. If Harry keeps winning, I'm going to have to pronounce his name correctly. That won't be today, though. And finally, Chasing More Pokemon scored the most points last week against my Steven Stogies. Bo Behind the Sticks Knicks, another player maligned on this show, threw for 4 touchdown passes to move Dan onto the fringes of playoff contention. The game represented my 6th straight loss. We might have Dave's trades. I don't know what's happening. It's either Dave's trades or it's the guest picker. Let's go to that.
I wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. You could cut ties with all the lies that you've been living in.
Welcome back to another episode of Chris's Picks. We're back on the old stomping grounds of Martin Berman Drew, thank you for being on the show today.
Chris, it's good to be on the other side of the camera. You know, it's been a while, I feel like.
That's true.
It's good to be back, though.
Yeah, the producer of the show is here. And, you know, my apologies. It's been a pretty hectic year to try and get guests. So the plan was to do an episode with Drew and somebody else. It has not worked. The guest situation has not worked out. But I appreciate you being accommodating. The other thing I'll say is I was kind of an ass in the beginning of this video, in the intro. And I say that only because I'm not going to be an ass for this, out of respect for Drew's time. I just want the folks at home to know that I'm not happy. I'm still not happy. Nothing has changed. I've had no epiphany. I'm still pissed off. But, again, out of respect for our guest, we will get through it.
This guy's a real jerk.
So
It's okay. The people want to see the emotional, heated Chris.
Oh, they saw it. They saw it in the intro. They saw it in the intro. Okay, so let's talk about these games. Dixieland Dreamin' versus Pending Trades we're going to look at first. So this is a matchup against Blake's hype man, his PR buddy, and Dylan Knight. And really, Will's team is looking pretty good. I know that I dog him a lot, but he's got Jalen Hurts now. So that's a massive piece for him because he was rolling with Jared Goff, who's really just an average quarterback. Now it feels like he might have a quarterback who can win a championship for him. Josh Jacobs has been big, but he's questionable. A lot of people don't know if he's going to play. If he doesn't play, Will might have to do something where he puts Rico Dowdle in at the running back spot and then put like a player like Bateman in the flex. You look at Dylan's team, he's had some players play already. He had Najee Harris play. Scored 6.4 points. Very underwhelming. Really, if you look at Dill's roster, he's got no running backs, Drew. A lot of them are on bye or injured. He's going with Chris Brooks, which I think is the backup.
Never heard of him.
Green Bay running back.
Who?
Cedric Tillman, I think, played already. He scored 1.8 points. I don't like this matchup for Dill. That's why this game is first on the list. I think it's an easy choice to pick here. I'm going with Will.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Dylan and I's game last week, it was probably the two worst performing teams the whole week, and I don't expect much more from Dylan this week. You know, a lot can be said about my team being a fraud, but Dylan's definitely a fraud team, and I think it's coming back to reality over these last couple of weeks. You know, he has one guy go out, George Kittle, who's been carrying his whole team this whole year, and his team just falls apart because there's not much else there. I mean, he will get Mike Evans back, but is Mike Evans really going to be enough? I think Dylan also is a little bit in his head with these quarterback selections he has. He's been trading for more and more quarterbacks, and yet he always starts the wrong one every week.
That is true.
I don't know. I expect Tua to do a little bit better than Sam Darnold in a better matchup, but I have to agree with you. I am going to pick Will here. Amon-Ra, 8 straight weeks with a touchdown. Trey McBride is as consistent as ever in the tight end position. That's so fickle this year. You know, even though he might be missing a couple guys this week, I think he'll be just fine.
You know, and I think it bears mentioning that even if this game is close heading into Monday night, Will's got Derrick Henry in the Monday night game.
He's scored a touchdown in every game this year. Amon-Ra touchdown in every game this year. He's
That'll
a
be the
touchdown
dagger.
merchant.
That'll be the dagger for Dill. And I do like what you said about his. He has been trading for a lot of quarterbacks, and it's been Russian roulette.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe he should get that figured out. We'll talk about your team because I know you mentioned your team. It was kind of a fraudulent game, maybe not so indicative of what your team is, but we'll get to you in a second. Right now, we're going to talk about chasing more Pokemon versus Team Takeout. And Drew, I think that if you told a lot of people at the beginning of the season that this game had playoff implications on the line, they'd laugh because Logan has always been sort of a bottom feeder in this league, although his team has been improving over the years. Hard not to when you have all those first-round picks. Chasing more Pokemon, Dan, his team started off real slow out the gate, but Puka Nacua coming back has been a big shift in his vibe. Puka scored 21 points last week. Look for another big matchup this week with him. Dan did have Pickens play already, a meager 6.8 points. But he's also got Tyrone Tracy, who's been turning some heads, the rookie running back for New York. That's been working out well for him. Logan's got a great running back situation. Speaking of running backs, I mean, he's got J.K. Dobbins, who's reinvented himself after the injury. But Logan's best running backs this week aren't playing. Breece Hall, Bijan, both on bye. He's got to start Audric Estime, the Denver running back, backup running back. I really don't see Logan doing well this week. And again, it comes down to running backs. We've got Eckler with 4 straight games, double-digit points.
Yeah, who would have saw that coming?
Who saw that coming? I mean, and that's so that Eckler's on Dan's roster. I think all the tea leaves right now are saying Dan is once again heating up at the right time. I'm picking Dan.
You know, I agree with you. Logan's team has, I think it's you hear this every episode, Logan's team has, exceeded expectations. And I think a lot of that is just because of Bijan Robinson just carrying the weight. And also this guy, Darnell Mooney, coming out of nowhere. Who would have saw that? Former gritty there. Yeah. But I think Logan just has too many bye weeks this week with Bijan, Brees. Who else? Darnell's on bye, Shakir's on bye. So, I mean, when you're having to rely on guys like Troy Franklin to fill that and Romeo Doubs, who's been like really hit or miss, and AJ Barner at the tight end position, who's that guy? I don't know. And I think Dan just has too many good matchups. Bo Nix has been honestly might be the rookie of the year now. There's a lot of steam against a bad Raiders team. Tyron Tracy against a bad run defense in Tampa Bay. Jahmyr Gibbs against probably the worst run defense in Indianapolis. That's just power right there. Multiple touchdowns going to be incoming. Jawan Jennings, this guy's come, totally benefited from the Brandon Ayuk injury. Expect a lot of throwing in that game against Green Bay. DJ Moore, maybe a revitalization with the offense since they fired the offensive coordinator. I mean, it's just too many positives on Dan's side and too many negatives on Logan's. You got to just ride the hot hand in Dan. And if you look ahead at Dan's schedule, I think he has luckily has pivotal matchups between Logan. I don't know who he has next week. I think it might be Harry, and then after that he has Dylan. So 3 playoff matchups where if he runs the board, you like to see him get in that 6th spot right there for the playoffs.
Also very winnable games.
Yeah.
From what you just those games aren't necessarily out of reach for Dan to win. You did mention too Logan's expectations. He's exceeding expectations, but it's easy to do that when the expectation is
so
the floor.
The ceiling is the roof. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
Logan has been last or tied for last, I think, every season.
Yeah, it's season 4 now, 3 seasons in a row. I think it's always been a combination of Logan, Blake, and then I think Jack was last in the first year, and then you've kind of been in the bottom the last couple of years.
And I may end up there again, looking at how things are shaping up. But yeah, so expectations on the floor. He is overachieving those expectations. Congratulations to Logan, but again, doesn't mean much, and I think he's losing this week. We both agree on that, actually. So looking at your game now, Gritty and the Jets versus the Young and the Holeless, a lot has been said about your team. I'm interested to get your take on it because, you do have the second fewest points scored against you. So that is something to look at. I'm looking at your namesake, actually. Justin Jefferson hasn't scored a touchdown in 4 straight weeks,
It's been a while.
DeAndre Swift is maybe questionable. I actually do think Swift will play, but I think you've got an actual question, which I wouldn't have said earlier this season, between Stroud and Stafford.
Yeah.
Like, you have an actual question. I don't really know if there's a right answer to who you pick there to start, but fortunately for you, looking at Daniel's team, the Young and the Holeless, I mean, this is a very limited team. This is a team who he doesn't have many paths. He doesn't have many options. Ford and Njoku have already played. They didn't do so hot for him. Daniel's got no running backs. If you look at Daniel's roster, he's got no running backs to play. He can't even play with a situation where he shifts somebody from flex to running back and then replaces on the flex. He can't do that. Now, this is a great time to mention that he did trade away Charbonnet for nothing. Charbonnet could have been starting this week.
Yeah.
Now, Johnny Smith had a great game last week, so I'm not here to boo-hoo that. But I just think that we're seeing team management issues catch up with Daniel here, and unfortunately, I think team management issues are going to rule the day. So while there are a lot of questions about your team, I think that you pull this one out.
I agree. I think it's just this week and the week 14 are just brutal with the bye week. 6 teams on bye each week. It's just really about the teams who have guys to play. And fortunately for me, I just have one guy out on bye, which is Devontae Adams, who really has been kind of inconsistent this year. But as far as the QBs go, I dogged on Dylan, but I really have a QB I pick the wrong QB every week.
It's
too.
a question for
It's
you.
really a
Yeah.
question. Like Stafford dropped 27 last week, and I played CJ Stroud, who was in a better matchup. He dropped maybe 12 points and made me sweat it out Monday night. But yeah, it is really tough. I think I am going to ride with CJ Stroud this week. Stafford does have a worse matchup. The Eagles defense has really turned it around, especially in that secondary with those young guys. So I'm just going to, hopefully Stroud will get it going past him, because the run defense for Tennessee has been really tough. I think my X factor this week is James Conner. A lot of people hated on the James Conner trade not the Nico part, but the James Conner part of the trade. James Conner's been fantastic this year, low key. I think he's he just had his bye week, and I'm looking now, he's running back 16 on the year. Out of the guy that's that old, I mean, it's kind of what you hope for, and what I was hoping for was kind of like that RB1, RB2 range. I agree. I mean, just a lot of my guys aren't performing up to par, but I think just that Daniel's team's just too hurt this week. I expect a few of his guys to get points, like Tyreek Hill could have a blow-up game.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp is always going to get 8 targets in a game, but I think Daniel's just hurting, like you said, too much at the running back position, and you're just fortunate that I had all my buys earlier in the year, and I can kind of coast now.
Yeah, and let me say this too, because I call Daniel's team limited. The retort, I guess, from him and from the rest of the league would be Chris, you've got a pretty limited team. I'm not saying that Daniel's team is bad per se. I'm just saying it's limited. We're seeing a situation where he's trying to figure out who to play. It's sort of like when I was in grammar school. There was a kid in my class who ate flowers. He would go out into the playground and eat flowers.
Don't go eat some flowers.
My secret shame.
Clearly, there was something wrong with him. My dad said, look, son, he's just limited, okay? So that was a real polite way of saying that he can do some things, but he can't do all things. Daniel's that team right now. He's the kid eating flowers. He can do some things. He can't do all things. He's mid.
And, I think there's a lot of teams like that, too. Especially
league,
at the running back position, there's the heavy hitters and then about 10 feet of crap after that. So, it's tough to fill those running back positions if you got 2 guys out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing we've added flex positions. Let's move on to Team Average Joe versus Can't Guard Jameis. So this is a matchup between Harry and Blake, and actually it was Drew. It's funny enough, Drew was the first one to tell me that I'm pronouncing Harry's team name wrong. And again, I simply don't care. Maybe Harry, look, if he goes on a playoff run, Harry, if you win the championship, I'll pronounce your team name correctly. Until then, you got to show me something. But I will say this. Judy. 11.5 points last night in the Thursday night game. That's a massive play for Harry. He's probably going to go Gus Edwards in the flex position without Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, big game for Taysom last week, almost 40 points. Doesn't have it this week. So I would expect to see Gus Edwards there. Again, to Drew's point, you look at the lineups. There's not much to work with. You look at Blake's side, Justice Hill. I think will play for Tajay Spears. I think really that's probably Blake's only viable move. I mean, he can do some other things, but I think that's more of a winning move than some other moves he could make. You're looking at Malik, who is questionable. A lot of people I think he missed practice, but Malik has reiterated to reporters that he will play on Sunday. I think Bucky Irving against a Giants team could be interesting because, as you know, the Giants are starting Tommy DeVito. So if that game kind of gets out of hand, the Bucks could be running a lot.
A lot of handoffs.
So that could be a play. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to, I think, the 2 quarterbacks here. Jaden Daniels for Harry and Lamar Jackson for Blake. I think both of these guys are the pivotal pieces here. Jaden has a very favorable matchup against Dallas. Very favorable. But to your point again, if it gets to a blowout, are they just handing off to Robinson and Eckler? I don't know.
I agree.
Lamar, a little bit of a tougher matchup against the Chargers. And I think it's worth noting that both Jaden and Lamar had bad off weeks last week. I think last week was off weeks for both of them. I think it's a question of who bounces back, and I got to lean to the veteran here. So for that reason, I'm going to pick Blake to win this game.
I didn't realize how close this game was until I pulled it up.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think, dude, once again, it's just the bye weeks are killer. We'll see. Blake has a concert tonight, and then I'll see if Tajay Spears makes it outside the lineup or not. That is a big question mark. That might be the biggest question mark on this Can't Guard Jameis team. But yeah, he can plug into Justice Hill, but will Justice Hill really be getting all the passing work that he's getting? Chargers are a good team, but Joe Burrow kind of just torched them this past week and put up a ton of points. So it's definitely possible for Lamar to do the same. But I can't figure out this Ravens team for the life of me, if they're good or are they bad, or it's who shows up. Jaden does have a good matchup. It's always nice when you have Christian McCaffrey, but he's also touchdownless, which coming up to your game eventually, it doesn't look like Brock Purdy's going to play. That's news broke out today.
I did see that. So
will that affect Christian McCaffrey? Will he get more yardage? Will he get those dump off passes? It's really hard to tell. It is tough. I think with Neighbors being with Tommy DeVito, it really isn't going to be hurt him as much because it can't really get worse. But Neighbors really hasn't shown anything since like the first 3 weeks of the season. I think, just for the show, I'm going to have to roll with Harry here just for a little bit, but this is probably the toughest, closest matchup of the week.
I almost made it the game of the week, but Blake's been game of the week in a lot of these matchups, so I had to give him a break.
And I think it's just because Jerry Jeudy had a good game on Thursday is why I'm going to roll with him.
That's the biggest reason. Without that game, I don't know if Harry wins this.
If you filmed before Thursday, I probably would have picked Blake.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I agree. But for the sake of the show, we'll be different there. So I'll stick with Blake. You'll stick with Harry. Moving on to the Steven Stogies versus the Mahomes. So, I thought I was doing the right thing last night. I had a decision in one of my flex spots. I could have picked, I really sat there and I thought about this: Calvin Austin or Sterling Shepard, who I ended up slotting in. And to me, I was like, it's going to be such a low scoring matchup. The weather's bad. I just don't see Calvin Austin doing anything of note. I'm benching him. Come to find out, he scores a touchdown, catches like 70 yards worth of passes. Would have scored 13 points had to play him. So I'm now stuck with Sterling Shepard, hoping that he can at least give me a touchdown. This is really a situation. And I know I ballyhoo the flex position a lot. It looks like a situation where I've just got to deal with one flex too many, because I do kind of stack up with Dave in a lot of these areas. I mean, and it helps because if you look at my team, a lot of these guys have favorable matchups, and you look at Dave's team, and a lot of them have tougher matchups. But having to start Odell Beckham when Dave is starting Hubbard, Mixon, and Jackson Smith and Jigba.
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong.
The Njigba play is really the only comp you can draw. And I'm still, Odell has not scored over 5 points this year yet. I mean, he's coming off of injury, so he hasn't had many opportunities, but he just hasn't shown that he can even flirt with double digits. And then you mentioned to me, the Brock Purdy situation. I mean, that leaves me with the children of the corn. I can start Daniel Jones, who doesn't play anymore. I can start Bryce Young, who plays again but doesn't play well. Or I can start Aaron Rodgers. It's a children of the corn situation to choose from if Brock Purdy doesn't play.
Well, Daniel Jones isn't on a team. Aaron Rodgers is on bye, so it's Bryce Young or nothing.
You telling me Aaron Rodgers is
against
on bye?
Kansas City? Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is on bye. Breaking news.
You're telling me now for the first time.
Wow. I didn't know that. You're telling me now for the first time.
Okay, well, thank you for that. What a week. What a past few weeks it's been for me. So, just to speak to Dave's, to give him credit where it's due, Pollard is going up against a good Houston defense. Jonathan Taylor's going up against a good Detroit defense.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown might be a fraud now. I don't know who A.J. Brown is. All this to say, though, this is a very beatable week for Dave, and as luck would have it, it looks like he's going to win. So I'm picking Dave.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think Dave just has some bad matchups. Jonathan Taylor against Detroit, I think Detroit's probably the best against the running backs if you look at it stats-wise, so that's going to be a bad game. But really, Joe Mixon has been such a carry for Dave. And he plays Tennessee, who's really good against the run. Chuba Hubbard has probably been Dave's best player all year. He plays Kansas City. So you usually expect, these guys that have been so consistent for Dave to just kind of, not do as well. No, they ruled out Devontae Smith today, so maybe A.J. Brown will show up as the only receiver for the Eagles this week.
Of course they did.
But I wouldn't beat yourself up about Calvin Austin. I think you look at the weather and you bench everybody that
I
plays
made the
in that
right
game.
play.
Yeah, the right play. Maybe Mike Evans coming back will open some things up for Sterling Shepard. Brock Bowers has been great, but he has a tough matchup against Denver, but he also is the only person who can catch passes on that team. A-Chain has been great. Aaron Jones, who knows what he's going to do each week. He's kind of hit or miss. Josh Downs in a good matchup. Brian Robinson, my favorite pick for touchdown this week. I don't know what his odds are, but I'd bet it. I'm definitely going to bet it. But I think the quarterback position now, if Purdy doesn't play, it's just too much to overcome. I think Dave's just going to have, a guy like Njigba or Harrison that drops 20, one of the two, and then
this is hilarious.
And then we'll be sitting here. So I'm gonna ride with you on Dave on this.
Yeah, Daniel Jones. This would be the week Daniel Jones gets demoted, and
quits. He got cut today.
He got cut.
He got
I thought
cut.
he was playing scout team safety.
He got cut today. He literally got cut today. He's not on.
He's valueless.
He's not on
valueless.
It's been a long day without you, my friend. And I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.
And then I've got my other quarterback who I traded for, just to move up a couple picks in the draft. He's going to be doing ayahuasca this week on a bye.
Maybe he'll come back for the second half better.
I just cannot stand living right now.
My old friend.
You know what life's all about? It's about getting a paycheck and keeping a gun out of your mouth.
Okay. Let's talk about the game of the week. The Chubby W's versus Hunter Biden's laptops. I'm dubbing this the 2024 championship game. What year is this?
It is 24.
I'm dubbing this the 2023 championship game. Because it's probably the game that should have happened had it not been for a completely fraudulent game from Amari Cooper and his 50-burger. But the past is in the past. History is written by the victors, they say, and Will writes a lot of history these days, especially for Blake. But let's talk about these two guys. Scott had a big game from Nick Chubb, a huge game from Nick Chubb last night. He made a huge trade earlier this week. Maybe we've seen a Dave's trade on it. Maybe we haven't. I don't know the status on that. But Scott now has Herbert. He's got Metcalf. Scott's got guys that are gonna get 6 points. Like he's got dependable 6-point guys. I'm talking about DeAndre Hopkins, Jalen Waddle, Demario Douglas, Keenan Allen. These guys, their floor is 6 points. Which look. That's not going to shatter the earth, but it's also like you can depend on these guys to get at least 6 points.
You would like one guy, but you don't want 5 of them.
Right. You look on the other side that Jack has been very beatable these last few weeks. He's looked very vulnerable, and now he's got to start Tommy DeVito because Josh Allen's on bye. So Tommy DeVito, the good Italian boy, CeeDee Lamb without a quarterback. Now, I know CeeDee Lamb did well last week. It looks like they were doing some interesting things, incorporating him in the offense, a lot of jet sweeps, stuff like that to give him the ball. I don't know if that's going to last. I mean, we'll see, I guess. Maybe we have to give CD the benefit of the doubt, but I'm saying that's a huge question mark moving forward for Jack. I was going to sit here and say Ladd McConkey and Zay Flowers are X factors for Jack, but you're telling me Ladd might not play.
Yeah,
he's questionable. And so I think we're seeing a perfect storm here to where we're going to see Scott win this game. And I think Scott's going to win this game for a couple of reasons. One, he's catching fire at the right time. Jack is kind of cooling off at the wrong time, I guess you would say. But also for this, and you know what? I'm going to make it about me. I'm going to think about myself in this because this is, after all, Chris's picks. The last few weeks have been pretty brutal, and so I can absolutely see Scott winning this game to tie us record-wise for last place. We would both be, what is it?
3 wins?
3-9, I think it would be. And so I would technically still remain in 11th because of points, 4, but there's still a lot of football left to play. Scott could very well find his way out of last place, and I'm looking ahead of my schedule. This Dave game was supposed to be very winnable. It's not going to be now. I may end up last again.
Yeah, I think you played Jack than me, so it's 3 playoff teams in a row.
You believe in life
What do you have to say about this game?
This is tough. If you'd have told me 1 versus 12 in week 12 of the year, you would have been like, oh, hands down Jack. But I mean, I've been kind of saying it for a couple weeks now, like just a lot of changes between injuries and, not even injuries to Jack's team, but to like quarterbacks and stuff like Dak going down. Jack's team, he's not as invincible as he once was thought to be. No Josh Allen and his backup's Derek Carr. No Derek Carr, so having to go with Tommy DeVito. But the thing is, Tommy DeVito's in a favorable matchup. Maybe he can bring out the spicy meatball and take this team to victory. Saquon Barkley has been hands down the best player in fantasy this year. Kyron in a tough matchup. Zay Flowers and CeeDee Lamb, Jack's 2 receivers, just been inconsistent. Ladd McConkey's his only other receiver, and who knows if he plays. He does this thing a lot, though. He'll be questionable all week, and then at the last second, he'll play. It's really tough to go with because also on Scott's side, you got Nick Chubb dropping 18.5, 2 touchdowns in that game. Kareem Hunt, without Pacheco this week, they officially rolled him out against Carolina, probably the worst run defense. Justin Herbert in a good matchup against Baltimore. Those 2 guys are going to put up points, but then you look at the end of Scott's team and you have Waddle, who hasn't done anything this year. Demario Douglas, either going to get you 2 catches for 10 yards or 5 catches for 50 yards. And then Keenan Allen, who's apparently questionable. Let's see what he's going to do. Optimism for Sunday. You never want to hear the word optimism. That word is always bad. And that he just hasn't done anything this year. I think I'm just gonna have to differ with you here and take Jack just because just based on pure class, I think Jack's the favorite on the spread. You just gotta hope they cover the money line there.
Oh, that's so silly. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with your sentiment. And really, again, the Scott play is more of a gut feel than anything. And it feels like the right time to make I'm not ever going to pick Scott again this year. So this feels like the right time to pick him. So we'll see what happens.
It's definitely a trap spread.
Yeah. The Sharks are circling the spread for Scott. That's for sure. Well, that was the episode for this week, Drew. I appreciate you having. If you want to give a brief state of the league, the floor is yours right now.
I don't really have much to say. It's been a pretty quiet year all around, I will say. Some chirping here and there. Some team dynamics have changed. Maybe there's a new league villain that's out there. We don't know.
Oh, there is. There is.
But just another successful year, I think. A lot of time left to go. There's even those teams that aren't going to make the playoffs, they're still not out of it yet. Like a team like Scott or a team that's not going to make the playoffs, they could be fighting for this extra draft pick, which I think is going to be a new wrinkle that's going to make the playoffs a little bit more interesting. So all hope's not lost, and it's going to come down to get it in the season. I can't believe we're already 12 weeks in.
Yeah, I mean, it's flown by. The year's really flown by, and I guess. When you and I, it flies by, I think, especially for us because we edit these videos every week. And so we're like, it's already week 12, and other people are probably like, man, season's just moving like a snail.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know if there's going to be Chris's pick next week. It's always difficult with Thanksgiving. So we'll see if we can pull something off. But then, then I have to give a Thanksgiving message, and I've got to, tell you to be thankful about things. I got to tell you there's things on this earth to smile about. And I don't know if we're there right now. I don't know if we're there yet. We'll try to get there by next week. But, that's all I've got to say, Drew. Thanks for being on the show.
It's always a pleasure.
We will see you maybe next week. I don't know.
Cause it's time for Chris's picks. 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 He's got the picks.